Hey everybody, I am sitting at a wonderful park in Alamance County that I absolutely love and adore. I come here a lot. It's Cedar Rock Park in the southern part of the county, and I decided to come out and enjoy this day. We were told that it's supposed to be close to 75, 80 degrees today, and we're going to enjoy it because next week it's supposed to go back down into the 20s. Yeah. My sinuses are already starting to mess up, but that's okay because it's so beautiful outside. It's flip-flop weather. Okay, so even with that out of the way, I wanted to talk about a book I just read. You guys, I will tell you right now that I have never had a book made me think so much like this book. Some of the people in my area already kind of know, like my craft group people know, and my mom and my brother know what I was reading. And a book group that I just recently got into decided that they were going to read a book called Sisters in Law by Linda Hirshman. It's published by HarperCollins. It's pretty recent. I think it was released in 2015 or so. So it's not that old, really. And so it's really, really good book, I'll be honest with you. Right off the top, I will say that I did not know a great deal about either Sandra Day O'Connor or Ruth Bader Ginsburg. I don't. I knew of them. I knew a little bit about their work and kind of what they did, but I didn't know a lot about them. I think more recently, since there's a movie out that does talk about Justice Ginsburg, I knew a little bit more about that, but really not much. So this was a really good book for me to kind of be introduced in learning about them. So I say that right off the top. All right, so my number one compliment of the book is how she wrote it. I really enjoyed the fact that it was a linear type situation where she started off talking about them and their childhood and then progressed kind of like, the 60s, and then, what were they doing in the 60s, and then what were they doing in the 70s. So they would be broke up into sections. So in the beginning it was a ranch girl and a city girl, and it would talk about, Justice O'Connor as a young girl on a ranch on the west, and then it would talk about Justice Ginsburg in the city on the east. And that was really cool because it showed their two different environments, but how they were both very strong, independent women as they grew up. And then, Sandra Day O'Connor went to school on the West Coast. Ruth Bader Ginsburg went to school on the East Coast. And so it kind of goes through linear how they progressed from school age to college to on up. It was really interesting to see that, because you wouldn't just read one journey and then skip to another journey. And so by the time you get to where they're both on the court together, it's like really cool to see how two totally different routes and ways of going about things finally got them both together on the court. So that was really cool. And then talks about, when Justice O'Connor retired and Justice Ginsburg was by herself, for a little bit. So yeah, that was quite impressive, honestly. I really liked that particular part of how the book was written. I also liked how Linda Hirshman wrote it. Okay, so I know a little legal stuff, not a lot. I felt that I could understand this book. There wasn't a lot of legalese in it. You know what I mean? I don't know if you understand that, but it's like, it talked about cases. Of course it talks about cases. I mean, they're justices. But it made it more common language to where I could understand it on a common level. So that was good. I was really very thankful for that because I probably would have gotten lost pretty early on if that wasn't the case. Even some of the cases that they talked about, I was like, wait a minute, what case is that? And I'd be like, wait, oh, that's what that case is about. So that was really cool. So I definitely like that. I have my little cheat sheet over here of some things I want to make sure I talk about. So the linear style, the writing style, both really great job. I really, really fabulous. I really think that they both truly liked each other, to be honest with you. We obviously know that, well, you might not know, so Justice O'Connor was was confirmed during the Reagan administration, and then that was in the 80s, and then in the 90s, when Bill Clinton became president during the Clinton administration, he nominated Ginsburg. So there was a little bit of a gap there between O'Connor being by herself and then Ginsburg coming on the scene. I do believe, if I read it correctly, Justice O'Connor was actually quite excited that there was another female on the court. She was impressed by her. They kind of already knew each other a little bit. From what I understand, they kind of would hop into each other, and they went on some sort of trip abroad together at some point, I think, before they were both justices together. So I think they kind of already knew each other, and she was impressed. And in fact, if I read in the book, it says that O'Connor actually hired a lot of the clerks coming up from Ginsburg. So it's kind of like this, it's kind of like her clerks were being fed to her by, Justice Ginsburg before she became a justice, which I find actually quite awesome, actually. So they kind of already knew each other, kind of impressed with each other, automatically had a level of respect for each other before they even started working together, which I think is great. So when Ginsburg finally gets on the court, O'Connor's like, wow, this is great, another woman, but she understood that they did have varying views on things and all that, so that was good. They pulled a little bit at each other, but what I found when I was reading the book is that while O'Connor was a Republican in Arizona, when it came to certain rules and laws, when they were hearing things, she actually kind of held more of a centrist type view. So she was a pretty big swing vote, which I find fascinating, but really good, because she never let party lines dictate. Well, she did a couple times. We have to admit she did. But overall, she didn't let, just because the party thought this, that she wasn't going to entertain logic. Let's face it, guys, logic. She was very wise, actually, from what I can tell in the book. She kind of knew when not to talk, and she also kind of knew how to word things to where it wouldn't be combative, but kind of like, are you sure that's what you mean? I really like that. And then once Justice Ginsburg got in, she was pretty cordial, she was respectful, but then there was a section in that book where, toward the end, where she was in the minority, and she was publishing opinions, and, she was being a dissenter. That was the title of that section in the book, and how she wrote so many dissension opinions, pieces, in such a short period of time, which is not common, but she felt like a lot of progress was being pulled back, and that I understand, because I can understand that. So I found both of those very fascinating, and I found it really awesome. So I really enjoyed reading this book overall. I was actually thinking about it earlier this morning, when I was in my car going to the library. I turned that book in, and I got a couple new books for the next month read. Who do they go to? Like, when you're at the top of your game, like you're at the top court, there's nothing else above you. Like, there's nothing there. Like, if you get a case and you're like, oh, wow, ugh, we could just send this. They can't do that. They either have to let a lower level court's ruling stand, they could ignore it, or they could hear it and then either yes or no it. But they have nothing, they can't go up. Like, there's nothing up there. Like, that's it. They are the people. And I found that fascinating, because as lawyers, you always try to, like, get information and pull from others. I'm like, who do they talk to? Like, do they have like someone they're allowed to talk to that's not in the Supreme Court? Like, do they have mentors that have a gag order, but they're allowed to talk to them? I mean, I don't know. Like, how do they get to talk about their stress or their internal struggles with certain cases that are just frustrating to them? Do they have a psychologist? They might. I don't know. That got me thinking this morning. I was like, dude, who do they even talk to? Like, do they have someone to talk to other than themselves or each other? And I hate to say it, with the composition of the Supreme Court right now, I couldn't imagine Justice Ginsburg having many people to talk to. Because let's face it, she's in the minority right now, and I bless her, because she's one tough cookie, I have to say. While I might not agree on everything that she has pushed on or things like that, I have to admire her. I mean, she goes into the doctor one day and the next day she's right back up on the bench doing stuff. I mean, come on now. Could you say you do that? Not many of us could. If I go to the hospital for a day, I'm out for a week or two. I mean, so I give her lots of props. She's pretty cool. And Justice O'Connor stuck in it as long as she could. Her biggest issue was that her husband's health was failing, and with his diagnosis with Alzheimer's, she just couldn't risk him not having being there with him and supporting him. And she kind of stayed longer than she wanted to, but the whole Gore Bush situation in Florida, which she does admit she was a bit premature with, I believe, in some cases. She just wasn't ready to leave, and then she left with a deal or an agreement with one of the other justices, and unfortunately he passed away because they were both kind of and then all of a sudden President Bush was able to nominate two people, like back to back. So yeah, that was impressive. To see both of them go through their own things. Justice O'Connor, she had cancer. Justice Ginsburg, she had cancer, and she has other medical issues that she's had to go through. They both had husbands with ailing health. So they get the struggle, but yet they still came to work. I find that fascinating. I think both of them said it gave them something to do instead of worrying or being frustrated or anything like that. And I get it. I see that. I completely see it. So anyway, I really respect both of them for that. And then, let's see. And the book in itself, kind of like, I guess, my conclusion is that this book does talk a lot about topics that are important to everybody and how it progressed from, honestly, the progression we've gone through. We still have some work to do, but at one time, and not that long ago, really, women in general didn't have equal opportunity in the workforce. They just weren't allowed to. But turn that around, there was also times when men couldn't work stereotypical jobs either that were mostly female dominated. In particular, one case the book talks about is one about a man wanting to go to a nursing school. The nursing school happened to be all female. And it talked about a case where he said he had the right to go to a school close to him, even though it was all female. So it was more about the progression of equal rights, not one being better or worse than the other, but the equal ability for the opportunity. And I kind of see both of them struggling and fighting for that. So I think that was really impressive. It does talk about abortion and the kind of pull and struggle they had with the whole idea of abortion. And it's come back now. So people are talking about it. People are, throwing stuff out there that, I'm like, okay, whatever. It talks about the Family Medical Leave Act and how traditionally, a woman's responsibility was to be a caregiver, but it expanded to a guy being a caregiver. And also the expansion of that going into being sick in general. It talks about affirmative action, and how that kind of started. It talked about, the ability of people to sue because of sexual harassment in the workplace as a part of sex discrimination. So it really touches on how both of these women kind of approach those topics and those subjects, and how they did disagree on things and how they agreed on things. And I found that really humbling, actually, because it showed their humanity in struggling with, how they interpret the law, and what is the scope of the federal government related to individual rights. That was kind of impressive. So anyway, I think that's about all I got for you. And I think I touched on everything my little cheat sheet over here has for me. So I really think you should pick this book up, because I think it's a fabulous book, really. And next month I have I have three books on deck for next month. One is for an online book group, and 2 are for a physical book group. I'm kind of excited about them, although I'm told that one is extremely sad. I'm not sure how I feel about that. One's a biography, and one's fiction. So we'll see. It's a little, if I like them enough, I'll make a video about them. So I hope you guys are doing great, and Raymond and I hopefully will do a video soon for you guys. I'm not really sure what we'll do, but hopefully we'll be able to do a video for you guys. Anyway, see y'all later. Have a good one. Bye.